Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Next Stop Automation, the podcast where we talk to people from the logistics industries about wins, challenges, and the future of operations. Today, Luca Conner from Packin sharing a little bit of his success story and how they were able to scale at such a young age from zero to over 1 million of annual recurring revenue in less than 2 years without even marketing. Luca, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Constantine. People get a little confused because our domain is Go Packin, but the name of the company is Packin. We like to keep it short, easy, and it kind of is a cool name because it encompasses what we do, packing orders.
You kind of introduced that a little bit. I was going to ask you as the next question who you are, what you do, and who your office actually especially relevant for.
Of course. So yeah, my name is Luca. I'm the co-CEO here at Packin. I'm also the co-founder. So what I take care of in the business is strategy, sales. I'm the relationship guy. So basically I'm going out there, and how I describe my relationship with my co-founder is he creates the product and maintains it, right? So he's in charge of our fulfillment systems, what we do on that end. And what I do is basically I bring that product to market. And what our company Packin exactly does is we are a third-party logistics firm. Now, that's a very broad term, right? That encompasses business to business, it encompasses direct to consumer, Amazon Prep. Us specifically right now, we're almost entirely direct to consumer, right? So these are direct to consumer e-commerce brands who are outsourcing their logistics process to us when it comes to warehousing, inventory management, and actual order fulfillment. And right now, our offer is pretty much, like I said, completely directed at direct to consumer e-com brands. It just happens that we've grown off of referrals to this point, and because our first client was a clothing brand, the majority of our portfolio consists of clothing, fashion, and jewelry because word of mouth spreads between, similar e-com brand groups, and these people talk to each other and, kind of help each other.
Nice story up to this point. So basically, all that you have built up to this point kind of was led through the way instead of going for something and making that happen. People started to come after you, and you actually had to come after their needs to fulfill them. Is that right?
Yep. No, exactly. So basically, um, when we got our first client, we, we did a really good job, right? I mean, obviously, so we bootstrapped the business, very limited funds. My partner and I were actually 19 years old when we started. And essentially, when we provided this very good service to the first client, they were actually a very well-known space, well-known brand in our space, which we're very lucky for that. Our first contract being a larger brand, it adds credibility. And the fact that we provided them a very good service at first kind of meant that, immediately that was spread around to the similar brands that look up to them in a way. And exactly like you described, it was less of going out there and, spending money on acquisition to find our market. Our market found us through our service, right? And from there, it became about, because the growth is coming through referrals, just applying the same service that got us into the door with our first client to these other brands who fit the same exact customer base. Pretty similar stuff when you're dealing with clothing. It is a similar item and it's a similar process as a result. And it's just about replicating that process in um, a manner that can solve the same problems that each brand faces.
Pretty much nailed down what the secret behind successful scaling is, I would say. But let's take us back to the very beginning. You also found your way into this industry by being on the other side of what you guys do for your customers now. Would you would you share a little bit about how
Yeah,
all this started?
I'd love to elaborate. So my co-founder, Jacob, him and I have been lifelong friends. We went to the same preschool. We grew up together. Our parents were always hanging out together. And, I would say we were about 15 or 16 years old. I kind of saw him doing stuff with Amazon FBA, in particular. And I went to him and I asked, hey, teach me what you do, man. It could sound a little bit needy, but he was very welcoming to it because most kids our age aren't really focused on that, right? When you're that age, you're focused on everything else but building a business and entrepreneurship. Some people aren't, some people are focused on it, and that's a good thing. But I came to him, I asked him, hey, teach me what you do, and I want to help you do it and do it on my own, and we can work together. And he was happy to do that, right? So basically, he got me into the world of Amazon selling. That was my first touch with e-commerce, his as well. And in particular, the first product that we really had success with and kind of formed the track of our Amazon business throughout high school and early college was above ground pools, right? So it was in the summer of 2020, right when COVID happened, and there was coincidentally a heat wave at the same time, right? And essentially what happened was no one was going to these community pools. No one was going to these pools that, unless they had a pool already built, which majority of people don't, people then turn to above ground pools. And we caught wind of that trend pretty quickly. Of course, we were part of Discord groups, and you know how it goes. And we were paying for membership in those Discord groups, and that kind of gave us inkling on how to capitalize on this trend. And it was pretty funny at one point. We driving all around the state of Florida because that's where we're from. And we were taking my truck, his dad's truck. We were going to Walmart's, praying that they had these pools that we know would sell for a profit. And when we'd walk in, we'd buy out the whole stock we'd have, right? And since we were so young at the time, we were using our parents' credit cards. They knew we were good for it because we were selling out like crazy. But it was pretty funny walking into these Walmarts, putting my mom's credit card down and saying, I want everything you have. And the crazy part was these things would turn over in 1 to 2 days, right? So the main one that we had success with, we would buy it for $400 at Walmart. The freight to get it to the customer, because we were doing fulfillment by merchant, it's a huge product, several hundred pounds, was about $400. So we were making 100% margin, right? And we continued doing that. Obviously, as summer died down, that trend died down, but we had a very successful summer with that. I learned a lot from my co-founder now, just run a successful e-com brand on the FBM side. And once that trend went away, we didn't really want to stop. So we transferred to the FBA side, right? And our first experience was was retail arbitrage and of course, wholesale buying. So you're basically using softwares to calculate price discrepancies between something you could buy at retail and sell on Amazon. That very repeatable process. And then once we really ironed that down, we kind of went into our own white labeling run. And, our main product there was creatine. So we did very well there. And leading into those smaller products, higher volume, we were using 3PLs and fulfillment centers, right? And that was for a lot of the FBM stuff we were doing. We were using FBA as well. So we had some experience with the FBA structure, fulfillment by Amazon. And we encountered a lot of issues, right? I'm sure with you working with logistics people and, having your podcast, you've come to learn that there is kind of a stigma around the 3PL industry. I have a joke that when e-commerce brands are talking about their 3PLs, it's usually because they're complaining about them, right? And essentially, a lot of these problems that we identified, even though we were so young, it's basic stuff, right? It's communication. It is just customer service, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how efficient your 3PL is. If they're not communicating with you, you don't have that mindset and that trust needed to make the relationship worth it, right? That is a key factor. Even if they're performing at 100%, the communication is still important because it's such a vital part of your business. So we kind of thought to ourselves, and this was going into our first freshman year of college. Hey, we're doing well at this Amazon thing. It's kind of passive income at a certain point once you set up a category. So we selling that. So we decided to move to, hey, why don't we try to start a fulfillment center, right? These are problems that seem like they're easily solvable if systems are built with them in mind from the start. And I'll tell you what, we had no idea what we were getting into. That's for sure. We were way in over our heads, and in comparison to running an e-com brand such as FBA, especially on the retail arbitrage, it's not really your own brand. You're just reselling products. We had gotten so confident in doing that we thought, something like a 3PL, oh, it's just, similar type of application of what we're doing, just a different industry. And boy, were we wrong. Our expectations going into it were severely, severely under what they should have been. And, as a result, we learned the hard way, but I'm very grateful for it because it shaped a lot about how our business runs today and who we are as owners of Packin.
You just mentioned something that is obviously very crucial and a very good point about your business, which is how you differentiate your other 3PLs. Communication, right? What was it that back in the days, what was it that, excuse my language here, but that pissed you off when you were dealing with these companies?
Well, look, A lot of 3PLs and fulfillment centers are longer term companies, right? Some of these companies existed when the dot-com boom came out, right? There's obviously newer ones that are huge because they scaled during the real e-com acceleration period of the 2010s. But what I will say is that, you know, growing up in the digital age and being the age that we are, younger guys being fully raised, knowing how to use the internet, knowing how to use technology, implementing technology properly and setting proper expectations would eliminate a lot of those communication issues, right? And because of the fact that a lot of these 3PLs have a legacy structure and they've been ingrained in the systems they've been building for decades, it's a lot harder for them to pivot because you don't need twice or three times as many customer service reps. You just need to build a proper technological infrastructure to maximize their value for each client, right? You can have an account manager managing 50 clients instead of 25 with the added bonus of technology helping, then you're able to basically have constant communication without hiring more and increasing costs. So that's what really pissed us off, right? These issues are fixable. Implementing a customer support and customer service structure that makes the client feel heard. It is not rocket science. And, you know, the nature of our industry is the majority of 3PLs that start up, they're often very heavily capitalist, right? They're VC funded. And a lot of them basically focus on pure growth and filling their warehouse space. And they do this through free storage. They do it through promotions that aren't necessarily healthy. And then they're also so focused on scaling and building their infrastructure around scaling that they're not building. At the end of the day, the reason why, you know, you would think it's a no brainer. Why are these companies that don't have a good client support structure succeeding? And it's because they can. It's because 99% of the competitors in our industry don't have that. So it's become commonplace. It's almost like, you know, they could charge what they want and do what they want because there is no alternative that, you know, provides long-term value. Right. So that's the way I thought about it. That's what definitely pissed us off the most.
Sounds like even though at your young age, very young age, since you walked through every single step, you got to know more than all these big companies that just threw a lot of money into this business and tried to scale as fast as possible, ending up with customers in, customers out, not really meeting their clients' needs and creating a whole lot of chaos because of missing infrastructure.
Completely agree, man. Um, you know, churn rate's a huge thing in 3PL. Clients switch 3PLs very often. And, you know, think about it this way. A solid 3PL partnership, if you're a brand and you have a solid 3PL partnership, your rates are fair, the service is good, communication is constant, that should be your partner for the lifetime of your brand, right? Switching from one fulfillment provider to another is such an overwhelming experience for a brand. It causes supply chain issues. You have to restructure your process. You have to learn the new methods of that 3PL. And it is so much of a daunting process that you have to really screw up to make someone want to move 3PLs, right? And that's the thing. It is not too, I mean, I'm not going to say like we're perfect, right? We make our mistakes, but taking accountability and just communicating about those mistakes. That's the main thing, 100%, man. And that prevents the churn rate we're talking about with clients.
You, once again, please, just for someone who's listening and runs or operates in a 3PL, line out what the main things are that you should keep, you as a founder, as an operator, as a manager, managing executor should keep an eye on when it comes to preventing clients from churning and
Yeah.
all in all having a healthy client relationship, I would say.
So absolutely. So, you know, the number one thing you should keep an eye on is just proactive communication. You know, this isn't, you know, some big revelation. It's a very well-known thing that being proactive as a 3PL is how you do differentiate yourself and you prevent that client churn. I can give you an example, right? Letting the client know of a mistake that you may have made before they find out. Infrastructure input and the quality control process in place that, hey, when we have a mistake or we see something that may cause an issue, we should be letting the client know before they find out. Because at the end of the day, this is a strategic partnership. It works best when it's a strategic partnership, and people who approach it as a transactional relationship, you don't get that added proactive. So that would be the main thing is proactiveness. It is also accountability, right? And that plays into transparency, which is a big buzzword around 3PL. Transparency isn't just having a nice dashboard that shows all of the analytics, right? It's not just having, systems and analytics software that show sales trends and, needed restock dates. It's being fully communicative about when we mess in, right? So we have a very high accuracy rate. We have a lot of quality control in place. But one of the things I pride ourselves on the most is really owning it when we do mess up, such as a mispack or we miss an SLA, right? Which doesn't happen often. But when it does, not only are we very speaking to the client, letting them know how we're resolving it. Of course, we wipe all shipping fees, we compensate them the pick and pack fees, we pay to get that right product to the client. It is just, it's owning up to it, right? And then it's seeing that opportunity. If we mispack something, for example, for one of our clients, and it goes to that customer and the customer is obviously angry. If we take care of the customer in a timely manner by getting the product back and then we send them a new product and we include possibly a freebie, a note apologizing, that extra effort that we're making on the logistics end directly represents our client to their customer, right? And that customer, when they receive that second package free of charge quickly and with, like I said, that apology note, a freebie, something to make them feel heard, that's a lifelong customer for our clients, right? They're going to see that brand as, okay, because everyone messes up. And someone who believes no one should mess up, I mean, you can't really talk to them, right? You can't reason with them. But reasonable people will always see that type of effort to correct the mistake as proof that they should come back, in my opinion. And, I talk about a lot in the content I do on LinkedIn. I do some speaking events on how fulfillment, when done right, it could be a retention driver and a sales driver. Just because of the fact that the post-purchase experience, when carried through perfectly, definitely increases retention rate and returning customers. But then at the same time, uh, like I said, correcting mistakes really goes above and beyond. So I would say those are the main things that managers and owners need to look at as they scale. They need to make sure that accountability isn't faltering, that transparency is staying the same, and that overall, right, the quality of service can drop. And, that's why I'm very happy about how we've grown. We've grown almost entirely through referrals to this point. I think we've maybe spent, you could call it under $1,000 on marketing spend, and that's just for content, website, etc. But we don't run ads. I don't have people cold calling anymore. We are having exemplary growth. We've grown 400% in the year of 2025, and it's been solely off of referrals, right? And at the end of the day, what I'm talking about is going above and beyond for your clients. And if you go above and beyond for your clients, they want to help you grow your business, right? I mean, you're staying up late at night working with them, you're on calls with them, and you're doing for them what they could never expect, right? And what they're not paying for, because they're not paying for that extra touch. That's the intrinsic value we provide. Uh, and, that makes the client want to go above and beyond and bring you business, right? Because not only are they benefiting this brand that they know because they know they're helping their peer get into a good solution, but they're helping the solution that's done so much for them.
Definitely. You lined something out that really describes how, happiness comes from the inside, from the heart, right? And I remember a quote that said, there is probably not at least one single business in this world that was unsuccessful and they had 100 plus happy clients
Yeah, no.
because they are successful with what they do. Of course they are.
Your business is your clients. A business is systems, a business is an idea, and the business is the people behind it. But there is no business without the clients. And in my prospect calls, when I talk to brands that are considering choosing Packin as their fulfillment provider, I approach it like a conversation. I'm very level with the client, and I'm like, hey, listen, um, if you want to know who we are as people, mindset that we put into business every day, and it's quite literally true, is that your business is our business and our success, our revenues depend on quite literally when you do sales, right? The majority of the income from a 3PL is pick and pack most of the time, right? Pick and pack is directly relating to the client's growth. It's relating to the client's order count. And if you can make decisions and provide support now, not find elsewhere, it ensures that brand is healthier for the longer term, and it is more revenue for the 3PL at the end of the day.
Now, you mentioned a lot of good things and how to make this thing right. Is there maybe something that actually made you lose a client? That some mistake that occurred all of a sudden as you line up, people just make mistakes?
Yeah. Well, look, I will say, and we don't expect to keep this up forever. No one's perfect, like I said, but it's our goal to. But we have 100% retention rate right now, right? So every client that's ever came worked with Packin is still with us to this day. The average year over year for growth of the clients that we've had is 60%. We just ran a case study on a group of 15 clients that we've had for over a year, and the average revenue percent, right? And we're not taking credit for that, but it shows that having a reliable logistics system does allow for unrestricted growth because you can focus on the creative and the. But I will say is, of course, we've had cases with clients where we've messed up. you know, of course, the client isn't happy at first. Honestly, that client was probably thinking in that moment, oh, wow, like, I can't believe this happened. And while any other 3PL would have made a mistake, when we go and we give the client a call and we hop on them, that's what keeps that retention rate, right? It's that communication. And I will say, what I can say, losing a client as a 3PL, it's going to fall down to not communicating. And honestly, if you're missing SLAs, like you're not sending out 24-hour processing times, you have a very bad accuracy rate. That's the baseline, in my opinion, nowadays, boasting a high accuracy rate, boasting 24-hour shipping times. I mean, if you're not marketing that as your offer, you're not even meeting the minimum nowadays. It's a competitive environment, right? So the thing that really does, and I've had brands come from larger 3PLs, smaller 3PLs that have joined Packin. Almost every single time, their reason for leaving was a lack of communication. And it seems so simple, right? Just talk, have the proper communication structure. But you'd be surprised how bad it can get in some cases. And when you're working with these legacy providers, some of them are very good. But I've had clients come from legacy providers, $1 billion 3PLs with dozens of warehouses across the United States. And they focused on boasting their equipment, their capacity, their large warehouses, how many brands they had. But then once the brand signed, they would wait 6 hours to get on the phone with someone. And half the time it would be someone who would have to escalate it. They wouldn't have an answer. They have to wait for a callback. And with such an important process like fulfillment, which, I mean, it's everything. It's your inventory. I mean, if the inventory doesn't go out, nothing, I mean, it is, I think it's the backbone of any brand's operation. And if you're not having communication about that, the brand owner is going to be distraught, right? The brand owner doesn't know what's happening. They can't talk to someone. Inventory may be halfway across the country. And I mean, that in itself, you're coming to a 3PL to take care of the headache of fulfillment. If you're adding another headache, you're wasting your money essentially. That's the way I would see it. That's what I experienced when we were doing FBM back then.
Now that you've built this infrastructure really successfully, what are you looking towards in the near future or in the later future?
So, right now, uh, like I mentioned, the majority of our portfolio consists of clothing brands, more specifically streetwear, women's designer. We have some fashion, we have some jewelry, we have a couple beauty brands, but I'd say the vast majority, over 80%, fall into that clothing apparel niche and at a higher order value, right? I mean, our average AOV for our clothing brands is $110, right? And essentially, we're going to continue working on increasing our presence in this market. Our offer naturally has, and our process has naturally molded around this clothing brand portfolio, right? We perfectly provide a service to a couple supplement brands, beauty brands, but the culture around Packin and the culture fit and the actual process, it has been servicing streetwear brands the best. So we want to continue, of course, increasing our presence within that submarket. Right now, a lot of 3PLs don't focus on that market. And the fact is, if we just continue, of course, marketing the way we have, spreading the word about Packin through referrals, continuing providing a good service, we want to basically, I wouldn't call it exhaust, but we want to maximize our market share when it comes to this apparel area. And of course, once we hit that level, because what we're doing is working, right? Keep doing what you're doing. Obviously, expand on it, change on it, adapt on it. But if your main mission is succeeding, you don't stray away from it. I think that's getting greedy, right? So once we do reach that plateau point, though, because right, there's only so many brands in the sea, uh, we definitely do want to pivot to other markets, right? Supplements, overall smaller direct to consumer focused stuff. You know, we offer B2B. We do B2B for some of our clients, but our main focus and innovation is going to be focused on the direct to consumer end, right? And then as our resources grow, and it kind of ties into the theme of your podcast and your content, we definitely want to begin developing our own technology that helps augment our clients' experience with the use of artificial intelligence. I mean, it's a buzzword. You hear it thrown around all the time, but especially in logistics, which is almost an entirely data-driven industry, because it really is all data when it comes to logistics. It's the physical operation, but the decision-making and the development of the industry is based off the data. And
Sure.
AI is the number one tool when it comes to data analytics. I mean, for me, I feel like that is its best use right now, is construing such huge amounts of data into actionable decisions. And our goal is to develop in-house in tandem with the systems that we already have that work, AI technology products that tie into our current systems and then augment the actual experience for our client as well, to make us kind of a not an all-in-one solution, because you want to stick to what you're doing correctly, but you know, the the headaches that brands face, we want to be able to take care of, right? Because if you take care of the headaches that brands face efficiently in a timely manner and with good communication, they're willing to pay what that is worth.
You know, a lot of customer focused fulfillment, as you've done previously, to continue scaling that and support more and more brands with their exceptionally good customer service.
Yeah. What I will say is good customer support and service does not mean bending over back for your brands and killing yourself to, of course, get done what they want done, right? That is not a healthy relationship, and that leads to quality of service dropping. When I say customer support and customer and client service is our specialty, I mean this. The second I get into a meeting with anyone who's even considering working with Packin, it is so important to set the proper expectations. A lot of 3PLs win clients by promising everything, and they overpromise. And then when they can't fulfill on those overpromises, the client isn't happy, right? And then they leave, and it continues this unhealthy cycle that our industry is known for. But if you set the proper expectations from the moment you begin negotiations with that client, you set the proper expectations for information that needs to be provided, communication that needs to be provided from there, and just you make them and you let them know, hey, if you do this, if you execute this way and you provide me this information I need when I need it, I can give you the world, because we can, right? If systems are built properly, they are able to give the client the full service that they deserve and need, but the client has to have expectations set properly, and the client itself has to contribute to the relationship, right? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work if you don't have it that way. Sorry. And that's what I mean when I say client service. It is not doing anything and everything your client asks for, but it is setting proper expectations. And if the client chooses you based off those expectations and you fulfill on them, that is a successful 3PL relationship. And it is one that will likely last a lifetime, as long as the mission and the service quality of the 3PL doesn't change.
Now, to get to that point that you just outlined, scaling even further and getting more and more brands on board, since you started quite differently to what other companies that are funded and they have huge investments behind their back, do you see any difficulties that you guys gonna face on that way?
So look, I absolutely agree with you. We bootstrapped the business with, honestly, our own money from our Amazon ventures, right? And it wasn't a lot. We had no idea. I mean, we are lucky that we are here today. And you could call it a stroke of luck. You could call it hard work, but we really invested a minimal amount of money into the business at first for what a 3PL normally requires. And it's pretty funny. Before we got our first client, we actually got down to like our last few $1,000s in the bank liquid, right? And then we hit the turn, and because we gave that quality of service, the rest was kind of history. Um, but to answer your question about the obstacles we might face is, look, the plus is because we did it with our own money, solely funded. We had no advisors. We had no experienced team. It was our first time founding a company, and it was our first time doing anything besides the brand side on econ. Because, an econ brand in the manner we were doing it, such as arbitrage, wholesale reselling, I mean, it was a company, but it's not a full brand, if you know what I mean. It doesn't have all the intricacies that are required to build a brand. So getting into this, it was our first time doing it. We had no idea what we were doing. And I call it a baptism by fire a lot because look, we made a lot of mistakes and we lost a lot of money at first because of the way we did it, but we learned every single inch of how fulfillment works. We were in the warehouse fulfilling. We were building SOPs. We were learning the warehouse management system from scratch before we even had a client. Everything was built with our bare hands with quite literally no help. And, sometimes I'm sitting here laughing with my founder, and because of that, we know the product in and out, and we're able to execute in kind of every area of the business as founders, which is very nice. And that's what gives such a good quality of service, right? Because we really know what's happening on the day-to-day basis. And we went through hell and back to get here. But the obstacles that we definitely might face is the fact that when you're VC funded, you're immediately opened up to a huge network of advisors, possible clients. You have an entire village behind you, essentially, that's there to answer questions, help you see through what might be called BS, right? It's cut through the noise, essentially. And because of that, we need to be a bit more careful in the decision making that we do and the partners that we make. And, you could call that a disadvantage that we hold, not being VC funded, not being heavily capitalized and having that network. I mean, to this day, we honestly, we have an advisor that helps us from time to time when it comes to legal stuff, but the actual concept of the business, the innovation, the processes, the systems, the vision, it comes solely from the founder and I, which I say is it's a plus and it's a con, you know what I mean? And the main con is that lack of a network. But also the benefit to not being VC funded from the start is that, very quickly we became profitable. And it was because we built our actual systems with that in mind, right? So we weren't immediately hiring a huge team. We weren't immediately exacting a massive burn rate, right? And we were basically, but yeah, we weren't immediately having a burn rate, right? A lot of 3PLs, they get heavily funded. They go into the business, they hire a huge team, they get a big space, and then their sole focus is filling that space, right? Our full sole focus wasn't filling space. It was getting a solid client base at first, proving the concept of the systems that we built, and then replicating that. And because of that, look, I mean, a 3PL that is heavily VC funded may be doing the same revenues that we are right now, but they have 5 times as much headcount, right? And as a result, from a financial perspective, they're not as profitable. And if more profitable the business is, as long as it's led by the right people who maintain the vision that was there from the start, the better the service is going to be.
Of course.
It's a paradox because some people say when you maximize shareholder value, it affects the client, right? But when we're maximizing shareholder value and the shareholders are the founders, it ends up directly translating into an improved client experience, in my opinion, right? So it's it is a two-sided coin. There's definitely disadvantages we face when it comes to our network, which honestly we're building. People are noticing what we're doing. They're reaching out. They're talking to me. They're taking interest. And they want to hear what our experience has been because it is relatively unique for our industry, right? Um, but like I said, at the same time, man, we own 100% of the company. It means the vision that got us here and will continue to help us grow will stay intact for that much longer, right? And the decision making will be based solely off the vision that we built.
Amazing statement. Now, to close this episode, what single piece of advice would you give to yourself or to you and your partners back in the days if you could see yourself from the first day once again and just, yeah, give one piece of advice on the way that you would send this person or the people.
You know, I would say that we made tons of mistakes, right? We made tons of mishaps at first that we would be a lot farther in the process a lot earlier if we didn't make those, right? But at the same time, I wouldn't change a thing, man. I wouldn't have done anything differently because I'm very confident in the product that we have. When I talk to people on sales calls, I genuinely believe in what I'm relaying, right? It's because I've lived all those mistakes at the end of the day. It's like I know where we've come from and I know where we are now. And I honestly, the advice I would give myself is just, be even more confident than you were. That's it, man. Be more confident in the mistakes that you're making. Because, at the end of the day, the mistakes were crucial to the product we have now. It wouldn't be what it is now. It wouldn't be the quality it is now if we didn't mess up and build off of that. Um, the only advice I'd give to myself or anyone else is be confident when you're making those mistakes. Don't let those mishaps that you may have affect your motivation to continue the business, right? Because in that moment, I may have been thinking, oh my goodness, I can't believe we made this mistake. This may be what causes us to go under. This may be what causes us not to succeed. But now looking back at it, I can directly attribute our success to that mistake, if you know what I mean. Like now we wouldn't have this process this refined if we didn't mess up like that. You know what I mean? So it's so paradoxical, and you could call it hindsight bias, but be grateful for them almost, be grateful for the mistakes, be grateful for the mishaps, because they are what make you the better entrepreneur. They're what make your business better. They will be what helps you differentiate from the competition. And being transparent about them like I am now inspires people. It makes them feel a genuine connection to you. And, in the specific case of client calls, like I'm honest about this stuff, man. Like when I'm talking to prospects in a consultation, I level the playing field, right? I don't put up a pitch deck. I don't demo our system. I have a conversation with them. I tell them about how we got here, what our biggest mistakes were and how we built around them. Like I said, I set those realistic expectations, and I love to hear the same exact thing coming from the brand. And people appreciate that. It's refreshing and it leaves a mark, right? And that's the main thing when it comes to growing your business. It's leaving a mark on people and standing out among the noise because, when you have a good product, that does most of the work, right? The good product and the client statements around that good product and the retention rate that we have, it does 99% of the work for me. And the one thing that closes the deal is, hey, not only do we have this good product, but I'm honest about it. I talk about it. I talk about the bads and the goods. And, that would be my biggest thing, man. Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. To recap real quick, what you mentioned in this episode was jumping into the cold water on purpose, learning how to swim, making a bunch of mistakes, focusing on what the client needs, and scaling just by the word of mouth. What this means in pictures, you will make sure to put in some pictures at this point for how the warehouse looked back in the days, what it looks like today, and I'm sure in 2, 3, 5, 10 years, there will be a major difference again. And
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
there any?
Well, no, I'll
Yeah.
tell you what, we were in a 2,000 square foot. You can't even call it a warehouse. It was pretty much a shack in the woods is what I call it. Cause it was a shack in the woods. And we got our first client in that building, and it was a brand doing 1,000+ orders a month. And, I will say, like, our mistakes took us getting there. Everything we did that I've talked about took us getting there. That was 99% of it, but 1% of it, man, it was that client taking a chance on us, right? So it's not only about having a good product, presenting yourself well, being honest, but it's about finding the right people to work with you too. Because it just takes that one client. You hear this a lot. You just got to prove yourself once and prove yourself really damn well, and just continue doing what you did in that instance. The rest will The rest will do itself. But yeah, I'll send some pictures. You know, we were in a 2,000 square foot shack in the woods about a year and a half ago. And now I'm happy to say we've got 6,000 square feet of warehouse space, another 1,500 of office space. And then we're planning a move into a facility 3 times the size in Q1 of 2026 to handle the growth that we're having. And, you know, I'm blessed to be able to say that, man, especially at my age, being 21 years old. I can only hope I inspire people to like, hey, I mean, dude, it is a mistake-ridden path. You will be sacrificing a lot more than you expect. But I mean, I am so grateful. This has been probably the most important experience of my lifetime because it's shaped who I am as a man as well outside of the business. You know what I mean?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Really amazing. So for people that felt appealed by what you said, where can they find you? And is there any last statement you would get to other 3PL owners, maybe to companies that are looking for 3PLs to take on their fulfillment and not get in a warehouse that you leave again after a month or two?
You know, look, when it comes to other 3PL owners, um, the one thing I would say, and you know, I'm not going to act like I'm some voice of authority. I'm new to this industry. I'm young. I'm still learning every day, but we've had really extreme success, right? For the circumstances we were in, our success has been immense. And the one thing I can attribute that to is applying the mindset. And all 3PL owners, remember, your business's income is based off of the growth and the health of your clients. Okay. So in your day-to-day decision-making process and communication with those clients, remember that you don't have a business without the brands you work. You don't have income. You don't have a warehouse. There is no 3PL without the brands they're making. And for the brand owners, when you are in a meeting with a 3PL, when you're speaking to them, when you're talking to them, um, you know, don't focus on the shiny things. Make sure that they have the capacity and the technology to give you the service you deserve, but keep an eye on how genuine and level they're being throughout the call. Because this relationship, a 3PL to brand relationship, it only works. And the main determination of if it works is the trust between the brand and the 3PL. And that needs to be there from day one, which is a sales call. So that's what I would say to them both. And then what was the question you asked before that?
Where can people find you?
So yeah, they could find us. Our Instagram is Packin Inc. Packn Inc. There's not much on there because, like I said, we haven't been focusing on marketing, just referral based growth. We've got our website at www.gopackin.com. And then, you know, my email is always open as well. I love to hop on the phone with anyone who wants to just ask questions about what we do, who we work with, you know, maybe my experience in the day-to-day job. Right. And, you know, I'll have my email and phone number attached here as well. But yeah, the website, the Instagram, if you're looking to talk to us about 3PL needs, the proper funnels are available there. There's a Calendly link and everything. Prefer to meet face to face with any brand owner who has any questions at all, because this right here, the communication, is what makes the partnership.
Definitely. Great closing statement. Thank you so much for being here, Luca, and
Thank you,
all the best for your
Constantine.
future.
This was an amazing episode. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon. Okay.